Alright, I am back with another video, and today we've got a very, very fun one indeed. The final episode of the new Origin build series, that being the Dark Urge. And honestly, what a fun build this is going to be, as we now get to play with Shadow Magic, one of my favourite new subclasses added in patch 8. Being a Shadow Sorcerer as Dirge just makes so much sense. The lore and flavour makes it really interesting. Again, using dark, shadowy magic to become an assassin of Bhaal is awesome. We get to get some really interesting synergies out of some subclasses that we're going to be picking and multiclassing into as well. And even we're able to reflect the Dirge's journey throughout the game through in-game mechanics and our spell choices. And honestly, I think it's going to be absolutely amazing. And this build, I will say, if you're watching the combat footage right now, you've probably already noticed, is kind of capable of some chicanery. Thanks to the fact that we're going to be absolutely amazing at stealth and being able to use darkness to our advantage, we just get to kill a lot of people before combat even starts, and then when combat starts, we just get to go absolutely crazy. It feels like a version of a Bhaalist assassin that primarily focuses on magic, but still has that ability to do what it would normally do. And really, I feel like Shadow Magic fits Dirge so well, especially since we're going down the route of the canonical Dirge, which is a white Dragonborn Sorcerer. Again, I've made a Dirge Origin build in the past that did not use any sort of levels of Sorcerer, but then I went on to make, things like the Storm of Redemption and the Bloody Storm, which used Sorcerer, and this video is going to be kind of similar to those last two, as it is going to kind of follow the progression of we're mostly going to be playing a straight Sorcerer until the Dirge really starts to get his memories back, in which case we start multiclassing. But honestly, again, with our spell choices, we can kind of reflect the Dirge's progression in the narrative through the choices that we make. And again, Shadow Magic is so perfectly tailored to the Dark Urge. I mean, obviously it's kind of connected to the Shadowfell, which obviously Dirge isn't really, but I think we can somewhat handwave that when you see kind of some of the descriptions of the subclass and such like that. You just think, yeah, this works for Dirge. More than Storm Sorcerer, in my opinion, which is what he originally had. But anyways, without further ado, let's get into the build. First up, we are kicking things off as a Sorcerer, because obviously we do want to play a straight Sorcerer if we're keeping in line with Dirge's progression over the narrative. So obviously we get to start with Constitution Saving Throw Proficiency, which is a big plus since Concentration is huge on this build because of that special version of Darkness that we're going to get. We're also going to be able to choose a bunch of things like cantrips, and of course we've got a pretty solid selection to start with. Booming Blade is our first cantrip of choice, allowing us to, we can basically strike with a melee weapon, allowing it to do a bit of extra thunder damage if the target willingly moves after being hit. As we level up, this will increase in damage. It'll do some base damage when it actually hits, and then it will do even more damage when they move. So I think it's 2d8 on hit, 3d8 when they move, which can be 5d8 thunder damage off of a cantrip, which is absolutely insane, and it's going to synergize really well when we do eventually start stabbing. Speaking of stabbing, Bursting Sinew allows us to explode a corpse, dealing piercing damage to anyone around it. Pretty fun, bit situational, but very much on theme for Dirge, so I couldn't exactly say no. We're also going to go for Bone Chill. We do like to cause a lot of death, so a bit of necrotic damage makes sense. We prevent the target from healing until their next turn, while also dealing 1d8 necrotic damage. We're also going to be picking up the Friends cantrip, allowing us to gain advantage on charisma checks against non-hostile creatures. I mean, with the Dirge at the start of the game, we don't have our memory, so we start making a bunch of friends who we will obviously stab in the back later, both figuratively and literally. So, friends kind of works, especially since it makes people hostile after you cast it. So, yeah, it feels very dirgy. Moving on to our spells, we do have the pretty typical selections here. We do need mage armor on this build as we are using clothing, as well as the fact that we're going to pick up shield because of course we are. It's just free extra defense pretty much. But now, moving on to the part you've all been waiting for, the Shadow Magic Sorcerer subclass. You siphon your powers from the Shadowfell itself, but lighting your soul is snuffed out by an unsettling darkness. That last bit feels like it just fits the Dark Urge to a T. What little bit of light remains within the Dirge if you're not playing a Redemption Day playthrough is getting snuffed out by darkness. And let me just say, this is a pretty evil build. And I have to say, I did notice, the first half of the Origin builds were good aligned, and the second half were all evil aligned. Huh. That was not intentional, but I think that's actually kind of cool. Moving on though, we do get some stuff from our Shadow Magic subclass, namely Superior Dark Vision, which as a Dragonborn we don't get, but for those of you who will play this as a Drow, not really a big deal for you. We also do get Strength of the Grave, allowing you to, if you reach 0 hit points, you regain 1 hit point instead of becoming downed. I like to think of this as a mechanical way of representing how Dirge managed to survive Orin's onslaught, because again, the reason the Dirge lost his memories in the first place is because Orin basically stabbed his brains out, leaving him with memory loss and, you know, slightly less brain matter, and I think Strength of the Grave is a great way of explaining how the Dirge actually survived other than just the ball influence. So I like this kind of part of Dirge's story being mechanically reflected right here at level 1, which, I don't know, I just think that's fun. Moving on though to our ability scores and skill proficiencies. Our strength is at 8 because we don't need it, dexterity is at 16, and I kind of wanted to have this a bit on the higher side to make mage armor more efficient. Constitution is at 14 because we actually are going to use a piece of equipment that's going to buff this up to a 16 for us. Intelligence and wisdom are both at 10, but this is just kind of a stat spread that I like, but feel free to put anything strength, intelligence, or wisdom to 12 if you like. And charisma is at 16 because obviously it is our main spellcasting modifier. For our skill proficiencies, unfortunately, I couldn't select the Haunted One background for this build, meaning that we don't have medicine proficiency in this video, but if you were to play a Dark Urge, you would have medicine proficiency, which is why I went with the soldier background, because we won't be using athletics in this build at all, so it doesn't matter that we have proficiency in it, and it gives us intimidation, which Haunted One would normally give, and we definitely want that on this build, because we want to be a very intimidating dirge. Also, we're going to pick Arcana and Persuasion as our skill proficiencies, as I think those fit the best here. So if we lost all of our memories, but still know how to cast magic, some of that magic knowledge must be pretty innate into our consciousness, so we might as well have some Arcana knowledge as well as Persuasion because we are Charisma based, and we're very good at convincing people that we're not a deadly murder psychopath. Mainly because we don't know it ourselves yet. But we will. Moving on to level 2 as Sorcerer, we get to get some fun things, namely our meta magic, but also a cool kind of extra thing as well. We'll talk about that at the next level though, as I believe that's when we actually unlock it, but we do get some cool stuff to do with our sorcery points. So first up, we do get to choose another spell, entirely up to you what you want to pick here, but I really like Ice Knife here. It calls back to our White Dragonborn heritage with a cold damage attack, but it's also a ranged knife attack, dealing 1d10 piercing and plus 2d6 cold damage. And basically, I just think it's a very fun spell, and I like the idea of the Dirge's true history coming out subconsciously through his spell choices, or just the fact that he may cast these spells innately without even thinking. Like, imagine he's like, okay, I gotta kill this dude with magic, so he stabs him with magic, and doesn't really know why he decided to stab a dude with magic. But again, we will find out. We also do get to choose 2 meta magic options. I'm going to go with Twinned Spell and Distant Spell. Twinned Spell means you can stab 2 dudes at once with your bloody ice knife, which is very fun, and Distant Spell means you can stab people from very far away. Normally, Shadow Sorcerers do get Distant Spell as part of one of their innate abilities if you go to level 11, but unfortunately, we won't be going that high. Now, at Sorcerer level 3 is where you get the meta magic stuff. See, I'm still getting used to these new subclasses, guys. But we get Eyes in the Dark, adding darkness to our spell list, as well as a special version that we can cast using 2 sorcery points instead of a spell slot. Which means that it does the same things as normal darkness, however, we ourselves can see normally in this darkness and are immune to its blinding effects, meaning that we now basically have Devil's Sight or the Eversight Ring baked in to a spell that we can cast with sorcery points instead. Still requires our concentration, which does limit our options a little bit, but we really do want to play with darkness in this build, so I'm quite happy to have it here. And if you actually notice, there is a subtle change in the logo here. Look, so there's the regular darkness, and there's the Sorcerer darkness, where you can see the sorcery point icon actually in it. I think that's very, very cool. Nice touch, Larian. Moving on to our spells, we do get some level 2 options here, and I think this is another cool way to reflect Dirge's past in his spell progression unconsciously. We're going with Shadowblade. Now imagine this, again, Dirge is starting to have these stirrings. Maybe at this point that one scene from Act 1, you know, where he kills Alfira or whoever, has already happened. In which case those murderous tendencies are starting to come out, and maybe he unconsciously summons this Shadowblade to act as his implement of murder. It summons a short sword, allowing us to deal 2 to 16 psychic damage. And when you use the sword to attack on a target that is in dim light or darkness, hey ho, we can make darkness, we attack with advantage. That is obviously going to make a lot of sense when we eventually multiclass to rogue, because come on, you knew I was going to do it, and this is perfect. I just love the idea of Dirge unconsciously conjuring a weapon made out of pure magic, just to stab a dude without even really realizing he's about to do it, because again, that is the Dark Urge in a nutshell. I love it. We're also going to grab Quicken Spell as our meta magic option here, because of course we are. It's the best one. Moving on to our level 4 stuff, we get cantrips, we get another cantrip, and here, let's grab Ray of Frost, because again, we're kind of playing on our White Dragonborn heritage here. We get to deal a 1d8 of cold damage and reduce our target's movement speed, meaning it's harder for them to run away. We're also going to be able to grab another level 2 spell at this point, and I think at this point, if we're going to start stabbing with Shadowblade, we might as well do some critical hits while doing it. We won't be able to use this and Hold Person and Darkness at the same time, so you will have to pick and choose, but I think Hold Person just makes a little too much sense. You can also go with Cloud of Daggers or Blindness to inflict blindness to other creatures even if they're not in your Cloud of Darkness, Misty Step for teleporting, honestly, the Wild Your Oyster. We do get to pick a feat at this point, but honestly, because I wanted this very specific stat spread at level 1, I didn't really want to put a stat to 17, but if you did put your Charisma to 17 at the start, you could grab the Active feat, giving you expertise in deception and performance checks, which would make you an amazing party face, but I do want to go for an ability score improvement here and bump up our charisma instead, but feel free to play around with those levels if you like. Moving on to Sorcerer level 5, we do get to choose level 3 spells, and it's entirely up to you what you want to pick here, but again, since we're mostly concentrating on darkness in this build, I don't want to pick too many concentration options, even though Fear does feel like it would make a lot of sense, so let's just grab Counterspell to be an overall great piece of utility for the build, allowing us to stop enemy spellcasters in their tracks. Now, at this point, we're going to hit level 6 of Sorcerer, which gives us the Hound of Ill Omen, but I'm going to be 100% real with you. I wasn't sure how to fit this into this build's lore thing. It is kind of an ability that is just great in general, but it's kind of hard to come up with lore justifications as to why most people would suddenly just get a dog. But then I thought, don't hate me for this, but what if, you know, from the little bit we know about Dirge's backstory before he actually started going around and killing people and awakening to the Dark Urge in his Bhaal heritage, maybe his foster family that he had when he was a kid had a pet dog, and maybe it remained very, very loyal even after what happened. I think I just made some people sad, because I just made myself sad, but let's be real, it would make sense, and it could be an interesting and kind of tragic narrative way to tie the Hound of Ill Omen into this build. Nimbus is called Nimbus because he's up in the clouds. I am very sad now. Let's move on. Moving on, we do get to choose another spell that we want to pick, and honestly, entirely up to you what you want to grab here. I like Misty Step here for the utility, so I'm going to go with that. Now, at this point, I'd say we're kind of middle of Act 2 for most playthroughs, which means we've hit Moonrise Towers, which also means some more memories are going to start flooding back. People are going to start recognizing us, and it's going to start getting a bit tricky. So I would say at this point, we're going to have a little bit of a memory of who we once were, and that feeling of holding a weapon is going to feel much more natural as we strike from the shadows with Rogue levels. Because let's be honest, you all saw this one coming. Rogue is going to give us access to sneak attack at level 1, as well as some skill proficiency and expertise that I really want to grab. Namely, stealth expertise to make us basically hidden all the time when we're in our Cloud of Darkness. Seriously, open combat with this build by dropping a Cloud of Darkness on a group of enemies and start stabbing people until they notice you. Because, I'll be honest, it takes a while, hence the chicanery I was talking about earlier. We're also going to grab that intimidation expertise so we can be one scary dirge. And honestly, stealth expertise and intimidation expertise on this build just feels so right. I love it. But at this point, it doesn't feel good enough. We know how to stab people, that's just what we do, but it just doesn't feel right anymore. It feels sloppy, it feels somewhat basic compared to what we're capable of now. So instead, we decide to imbue our blade with our shadow magic itself, not just by conjuring a shadow blade, which we already do, but let's dump our shadow magic straight into it with a dip into Hexblade Warlock. The first of many on this channel, I'm sure. This is going to give us a bunch of things, like 2 new spells, Shield and Wrathful Smite, which we will absolutely be taking. Wrathful Smite feels like it makes perfect sense to dump on top of Shadowblade, allowing us to do a big psychic damage attack that can possibly frighten enemies, which, let's be honest, if you're being attacked by the Dirge, that's probably goddamn terrifying. And also Shield is great here, which means we can train it out of our Sorcerer spells for something of a higher level. We're also going to get Bind Hexed Weapon, allowing us to make it so that our weapons use our Charisma, as well as being able to inflict Hexblade Curse upon a target. Hexblade Curse will allow us to add our proficiency bonus to the damage roll against someone we attack with that attack roll from our hexed weapon, basically, as well as it makes it so we critical hit on a 19 or higher. And I like to basically treat Hexblade's Curse, again, you just cast it as a bonus action at somebody, and getting all these bonuses, basically means we're marking someone for death. We have picked our target for assassination, and now they won't escape. I don't know, for a Bhaalist assassin, having a kind of, like, curse of death that we can place on someone that makes assassinating them easier, just feels right, you know? So, Hexblade's Curse it is. We're also going to get the ability to obviously use Bind Hex Weapon like we say, but also medium armor, shields, and martial weapons. If we want to throw medium armor on this build instead, you have that option. So yeah, that's level 1 of Hexblade. The only level we need. Moving on though, we're going to go back to Rogue now and start working on that, giving us Cunning Action, allowing us to dash, disengage, and hide as a bonus action, all things that this build loves. But of course now we hit level 3 of Rogue, and of course I'm gonna go with Assassin, although Thief or Swashbuckler would also fit. Thief will allow you to be a left-handed spellsword, which is always nice, and Swashbuckler gives you some charisma-based shenanigans like fancy footwork and rakish audacity. But do note that we won't be going to level 4 of Rogue in this build unless you want to dump that Hexblade level, in which case you could get the Swashbuckler stuff like these pocket sand and all that, but I don't think it's really necessary for this build. And like I say, left-handed spellsword is an option here with fast hands from Thief Rogue. But Assassin is what I'm going for today because, come on, it's the Dirge. It'd be kind of dumb if I didn't. And I'll be honest, when I say that Assassin synergizes brilliantly with Shadow Sorcerer, I'm not kidding. That darkness is going to allow our assassination features to go insanely crazy, and again, cause all this chicanery, which will probably allow us to kill at least 1 or 2 enemies before combat even starts by hiding in our cloud of darkness and using the following. First up, Assassinate Initiative. You gain advantage on attack rolls against creatures that haven't taken a turn yet, so guaranteed sneak attacks. And making those attack rolls against creatures that are surprised, which if you're striking out of a cloud of darkness is most likely going to happen, you're going to get a guaranteed crit, which is awesome. So you can even open combat with a crit and then immediately drop darkness, because you can use, basically you gain your action and your bonus action back at the start of combat. So what you do, stab a dude for a guaranteed critical hit, probably instantly killing them, immediately drop darkness, and now nobody can hit you back, and you get to keep stabbing with infinite advantage. It's really, really fun. And again, these things can happen in various different orders to create all sorts of just wacky and zany situations where you are just coming out on top so often. It feels so fun to combine the assassin features with being able to just open up with a big spell with darkness. And again, because we get our action and bonus action back immediately, you can use Quicken Spell to then not only cast darkness as an action, immediately dropping that down and causing all sorts of trouble there, but then just cast another big spell as a bonus action going for massive damage, like Fireball or something if you want. Like, it's pretty damn cool. These features combine in a way that I never thought would be that effective, but again, you could just stab or use magic and it will be really, really effective. You have an amazing opening turn here, especially with both our spells and our weapon damage benefiting from our charisma because of our 1 level dip into Warlock. It all comes out great in the wash, and it's perfect for Dirge. Moving on now, we're going to go back to Sorcerer. Level 7 of Sorcerer is going to give us access to level 4 spells. And it's entirely up to you what you want to grab here, but at this point, can we really say no to greater invisibility? It would be one of the best ways to open combat before casting darkness. Being able to get off a bunch of stabs while remaining invisible, with our expertise in stealth allowing us to keep up the greater invisibility, then when we get seen, boom! We get to use our assassin abilities to regain all of our resources, drop that cloud of darkness, and it's basically like nothing's changed for us. It's so, so good, and I absolutely love it here. But like I say, we do get to replace Shield from our Sorcerer spell list, as we don't need it anymore, because we got it from Warlock. And also, for the record, having that level 1 spell slot per short rest just to cast Shield every short rest also feels pretty fun. But anyways, that's an aside. Let's choose our next spell, and I quite like Blight for just a big necrotic damage attack, but also Ice Storm would also work. And actually, you know what? Upon further inspection, Ice Storm feels like it works better. Think about it. It's just a lot of ice knives raining down. You think the dirge would not summon a cloud of daggers just to rain down on people with extra cold damage? You'd have to be crazy. So yeah, Ice Storm definitely takes the cake here, actually. And finally, at Sorcerer level 8, we do get to choose a level 4 spell. Oh, did I not replace the spell that I was meant to replace? Whoops. Okay, let's grab that Ice Storm for real this time. There we go. We also do get to choose another spell at this level. And honestly, we've gotten everything that I kind of want, so the world is your oyster here. Mirror Image can give you more armor class, since we are a bit on the low side with base armor class here, but thanks to, you know, being attacked with disadvantage 99% of the time on this build, it's not a huge issue, but Mirror Image could help if you feel like you're struggling a bit. But there's also Blight, which I was going to take for that big necrotic damage attack, and honestly, I don't see a reason not to. We're also going to take that ability score improvement and max out our charisma. Alright, and that is the build. Overall, you're getting a lot of cool stuff. You're still primarily a sorcerer, which fits for Dirge. You get all this cool shadow magic stuff that synergizes amazingly with the assassin abilities. Everything you do comes from your charisma because Hexblade, and yes, before anybody thinks otherwise, let's upcast Shadowblade, giving it a bunch of extra damage. Then, bind it, because it's now in our main hand, with our bind hex weapon feature. And boom shakala, it now uses our charisma for a lot of damage. And honestly, like I say, we have a ton of utility with things like Darkness, being able to cast it with sorcery points and make us immune to the blinding effect, Hexblade's Curse to truly mark someone for death and make it so they take extra damage, a slew of different damage types, Thunder, Piercing, Necrotic, Cold, which all fit with the build, even Eldritch Blast for Force. We gain that extra damage from Sneak Attack, which can be pure psychic damage to just really obliterate things that aren't Steel Watchers, because yeah, Steel Watchers are still immune. We got Wrathful Smite to make people fear us. We just got so much working for us. And of course, we've got Nimbus, which is, just the best thing in the world. I love you, Nimbus. You and Scratch are like best friends. It's awesome. But anyways, let's move on to the equipment, and I'll show exactly how this is going to work, because it gets a bit specific. We actually want Shadowblade in our offhand here, because if we have Shadowblade in our offhand, we can cast any of our damaging spells or cantrips as we want, with our main hand, like something like, for say, Eldritch Blast or Bone Chill. I mean, you will be casting Blooming Blade with our main weapon, but that's fine, and then we can still attack with Shadowblade in our offhand with our bonus action after we cast a spell, which I think is pretty damn cool. But obviously you guys know Shadowblade. It comes with advantage on attack rolls against dimly lit or heavily obscured targets, as well as coming with pure psychic damage. We also get to use the $Amorous on this build in our main hand. I would say that this is a pretty solid choice for our kind of main hand weapon, as it is just going to give us additional damage on our critical hits. And since we're not really going to be focusing on attacking with the $Amorous, although you absolutely can, we still get to use basically the full benefits of it. It is here to kind of just be a damage buff. So you can either wield it in your offhand if you care more about wielding Shadowblade in your main hand. Maybe you want to use it with Booming Blade for, this weird and wacky combination of damage types. But obviously, I do think the Shadowblade does kind of work better in the offhand, just if you want to cast main hand spells more often. So honestly, you'll have to play around with this choice and kind of do what you decide. You might actually find that binding with Amorous as your Hexblade weapon, if you're going for the main hand attacks, is a bit better for you. It's entirely up to you. Choose what you like here. But I kind of like having the Shadowblade in the offhand just to have the freedom to attack with it a bit more often. Now, obviously, in the early game, though, we're going to be playing more of a sorcerer, and I forgot to grab it here for the video, but it will be linked in the description. You're going to want to grab Melf's First Staff, which is basically just there to give you a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls, which is going to feel great in the early game. So I would definitely pick that up. Unfortunately, I forgot to grab it and the actual early gamer headpiece I suggest, because I changed it at the last minute before this build because I forgot that I used the Spell Sparkler in the Gale video, so I had to swap it out here. But Melf's First Staff is going to be pretty goddamn good. We've also got in our ranged weapon slot here the Vicious Shortbow, which does the same thing as the Amorous, just giving us additional damage on a crit, and yes, those do stack, so it's pretty goddamn powerful. Moving on to our headpiece of choice, we've got the Givers of the Worshipful Servant. It's literally a dirge item. We take our butler's hat, and we use it for our own nefarious deeds. We gain momentum equal to our charisma modifier at the start of each turn, momentum increasing our movement speed, so we can do pretty much whatever we want in those first turns of combat in terms of positioning. Go far away for ranged attacks? Of course. Getting close for stabbing? Absolutely. But the main thing that we're here for is advantage on concentration saving throws, which means even with our 16 in Constitution here total, we're pretty much going to be succeeding those important concentration checks on things like darkness all the time. For your early game option, though, I do recommend, let me double check my document because I forgot what it was. The Fistbreaker Helm that you can pick up in Act 2. It gives you a +1 to initiative rolls, which kind of fits into the Assassin vibe, kind of like an earlier version of like kind of those high initiative rolls that Assassin gets and such like that, as well as the fact that it'll give you a +1 bonus to your spell attack rolls. So overall, pretty solid mid-game option. For your cloak, obviously the Deathstalker Mantle, we kind of have to go with it. Whenever you kill an enemy, you become invisible. This is literally the Dirge's signature item. We can't go without it. Moving on to your chest piece choice, and honestly, you've got some variance here. I would say that the Enraging Heart Garb fits great. While raging, the wearer guarantees gets 2 turns of wrath. That's been broken since the start of the game, has never worked. Doesn't matter for us though, since we wouldn't be raging anyway. The main thing though here is the +2 to Constitution to help with our concentration saving throws, and also the fact that I think it just looks pretty goddamn sick on Dirge, while allowing us to round out our HP at a solid 90, which is pretty good for a build that is mostly a full spellcaster. However though, this is what I think the Dirge could possibly canonically pick as just a possible option. There are more, obviously the late game robes would be great, but of course I do have to point out, because of the fact that we are a charisma based caster and yada yada yada, that the potent robe exists. And obviously, as a mechanical thing for this build, I do recommend it. Your cantrips would deal additional damage equal to your charisma modifier, so now we basically do have agonizing blast for Eldritch Blast without needing to go to that 2nd level in Warlock, and we're going to gain temporary hit points every turn equal to our charisma modifier, and it's going to give us a +1 to our armor class. But, and it's a big but, don't laugh, Potent Robe can only be obtained on a Dirge playthrough if you already know Alfira is going to be killed, and I think if we're playing a lore-accurate version of the Dirge, he wouldn't know this, which means Alfira is guaranteed to die, which means you don't get the Potent Robe in your playthrough. If you want to kind of, do the whole throw the game mechanic in there, throw away the lore relevance, just to get the powerful thing, fair enough, totally fine. Use the Potent Robe, as I do think it would be overall better than the Enraging Heart Garb. But I do think if you want to play the most lore-accurate version of a Dirge whose build actually reflects the playthrough as you'd be going through it and reflects the lore and all that, I don't think the Potent Robe works. I don't. I'm sorry. Although, if you want to kind of play the game a bit and, kind of gamify that kind of aspect of it, go for it. The Potent Robe is amazing. Here we have the Gloves of the Balanced Hands for our glove option, because we want 2-weapon fighting, because we are dual wielding, and we don't get it any other way. And finally, the Boots of Arcane Bolstering. Because we can dash as a bonus action, we can actually build up these arcane charges, which allows us to, while the target is threatened, tooltip for this is rubbish, the affected entity will have a +2 bonus to damage with spells. So basically, how do I say this? So if you're attacking a threatened enemy, you will have a +2 bonus to damage with your spells. So overall, it's pretty much a net buff in terms of the damage that we're capable of doing. If you actually put Magic Missile on this build, that'll apply that +2 bonus to damage to every single Magic Missile, so that does get pretty powerful. And again, since we can dash as a bonus action, we can just kind of build this up for free. So that's not too bad. Overall, you can kind of put whatever you like in this slot there. Also, we do have the Amulet of Bhaal here, which allows you to, on a hit, you inflict bleeding upon targets that have their maximum hit points. I mean, this fits amazingly for Assassin Rogue, and it's literally the Amulet of Bhaal. We're doing an Evil Dirge run, how could I not include it? But now this is where it gets really fun. After death, do us part. This is us playing on that whole Dirge just kinda doesn't die thing that we got from level 1 of Shadow Sorcerer. Because this happens that when the wearer is downed, they rise once more with half their HP restored, but are gripped by Shadow Possession. And they still haven't fixed the Shadow Possession thing, which is unfortunate because I think it would make sense for the build because it would make us go insane, but unfortunately this is still broken. So basically once per long rest, when you go down, you just get back up with half of your hit points. This means we get back up for free twice. And it kind of goes in order of, it does the subclass one first, so you'll first get up with 1 hit point remaining. So at this point, you're a little bit ticked off, but you're still in dire straits. The second time, though, you just go full Insano mode, getting half your HP back, and are just goddamn pissed, and you're going to start stabbing people and casting spells like there's no tomorrow. So getting 2 kind of revives to kind of go for that, Undying Dirge thing honestly feels really fun. So I like this build here. And we're going to be pairing this with the Killer Sweetheart, allowing us to, whenever we kill a creature, which could be right at the start of combat thanks to the, Assassin Darkness shenanigans, We can basically get a reaction that we can bank to spend to gain a guaranteed critical hit whenever we want, once per long rest, which I think makes a lot of sense for Dirge. Now, overall, I will quickly show this off as well. The Armour class here, as I did say, it is a bit on the slower side. We do gain a grand total of 16, but again, you have to remember, we're not really going to be getting attacked like for normal chances a lot of the time. We're either going to be invisible, way in the back casting range spells, up close dealing melee damage within our darkness, or while invisible. Like, our enemies aren't really going to be hitting us that much, so I don't think this lower AC is too bad, but feel free to throw in things like the Cloak of Protection or the Evasive Shoes, maybe both, to bump this up to an 18 at least, which would definitely feel a lot better. Now, I am going to be pointing out, obviously, that the Ring of Arcane Synergy also exists. Casting Eldritch Blast and then being able to make offhand attacks with our Shadowblade, with additional damage from our spellcasting modifier, would be pretty powerful, but I did use this on the Will build, so this is getting an honorable mention. If you're not using my Will build, then go ahead and use this here. I just thought I'd mention it. But another thing you are going to want to pick up in your playthrough is the Resonance Stone. All creatures nearby are steeped in bliss. You get this towards the end of Act 2, which is right as you start to really learn who you are. You would learn what happened to you after Orin munched up your brains when you're down in the Mind Flayer colony, and then obviously you fully remember that you're a Bhaal spawn at the start of Act 3. And I feel like learning this and gaining this steeped in bliss condition around the same time feels very fitting for Dirge. Like, imagine you're now just fully embracing your murderous heritage, and as so, you're now the happiest you've ever been, and it's time to do some killing. Steeped in Bliss makes it so that all creatures, including yourself, but also in a range around you, are seized by great joy. The affected entity is more energized and also more mentally compliant. You will have advantage on physical checks and disadvantage on mental saving throws. Our mind is a broken mess, which means that disadvantage on mental saving throws does feel like it makes sense, but if you want to kind of, twist it so it's just a neutral kind of thing, there's no disadvantage, throw the Face Semblance amulet on this build to gain advantage on all of those checks, which will cancel out the disadvantage here. But you have advantage on physical checks, which is going to feel very, very nice, and also, while you are vulnerable to psychic damage, which could be dangerous against Mind Flayers, all the enemies within melee range of you are also vulnerable to psychic damage. Shadowblade is pure psychic damage. We can upcast Shadowblade now. We can make it a hex weapon now. We can potentially critical hit with extra damage from our proficiency bonus being pure psychic damage. All of that gets doubled. This is stupidly broken. Upcasting Shadowblade with the Hexblade's Curse, with the Resonance Stone, is insanely strong, and I love the idea that Dirge is just like fully embracing himself and is now steeped in utter madness, which allows him to kind of be able to psychically influence those around him through sheer audacity alone and deal double damage with his Shadowblade strikes. Again, sneak attack with the Shadowblade as well. That's also getting doubled. Like, this goes insanely crazy. Like, the Resonance Stone is just stupid broken. Yes, it technically makes you vulnerable, but you can actually negate those disadvantages pretty easily, so I absolutely recommend you grab this one. And finally, everything here is coloured in the vanilla Black and Furnace Red dye, but honestly, that Resonance Stone is putting in a hell of a lot of work, and I think makes for the ultimate Dirge weapon for Shadowblade. And that is the end of the build, and honestly, what else can I say? I think I've presented something pretty goddamn fun here. It's extremely powerful, the mechanics synergize in an interesting way, we get to play with a bunch of new toys, and we still get to make a Dirge that feels super canon. We're still playing a Sorcerer, but with a new coat of paint that feels like it matches the kind of lore and background of the character. We also get to do big assassin-y rogue stuff, which again, makes sense for a Bhaal, as an assassin of Bhaal. And finally, we get to hit it with that Hexblade level to just make everything tie together in a lovely little package. Combining that with the Resonance Stone, it just gets stupid. I think the equipment synergizes with the abilities greatly. I think the spell choice, and again, the spell subclass features, make a ton of sense for Dirge, especially that getting up from death thing. Like, it all just works out. I absolutely love it. So yeah, that is the build. And there's not really much else to say here other than thank you for sticking around for the Origin Build series. I do have some other stuff that I will be working on. Like I said, I've got some, I've got a shadowheart, a good version build, but I think nobody is going to really see coming, like kind of how I do that. And I think it's going to be very fun and unique. I think people are going to like that one. And also, we're going to be starting the Patreon Build series soon. We're going to be kicking things off with Vecna, which I think everyone is going to like. So yeah, that is going to do it for me here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.